All right. Argument in America. Essential issues, essential texts. We got part one, the environment. Part two, education. Part three, censorship. Four, struggles for liberation, slavery, women's rights, civil rights. Part five, the individual and the community, civil disobedience. Becoming America and immigration and assimilation. And some arguments about argument. Okay. Let's go through. So this is pretty cool argument. And so what it's looking like is just a whole bunch of different essays. Black history is coming up. Uh, so this would be great because it has a lot of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Frederick Douglas, Jesse Jackson. So another one. So, oh man, yeah, this is extremely interesting. It's just a whole bunch of different essays or speeches, whatever you want to call it. But what will for a whole different thing, I'm gonna read the essays. That's more for America, but or for Black history. But let's um what to the slave is the 4th of July, 229 by Frederick Douglas. We're not. I'm not gonna go into the history of Frederick Douglass. When I, when I go through this, depending on how long these are, uh, wait, how? Okay, yeah. No, I'm not. This is plenty, plenty. 248. Yeah, it's plenty for me to extract 400 words for you guys. But let's kind of go over what he's discussing. What to the slave is the 4th of July. Let's see in here because I seen bold. The present. Yeah, wow. This is gonna be intense. The internal slave trade. All right, let's look at what he says. This take the American slave trade, which we are told by the papers is especially prosperous just now. Ex-Senator Benton tells us that the price of men was never higher than now. He mentions a fact to show that slavery is in no danger. This trade is one of the peculiarities of American institutions. It is carried on in all the large towns and cities in one half of this confederacy, and millions are pocketed every year by dealers in this horrific traffic. In several states, this trade is a chief source of wealth. It is called, in contradistinction to the foreign slave trade. The internal slave trade is probably so called so too, in order to divert from it the horror from with which the foreign slave trade is contemplated. All right, let me break it down. So during so around this was when it was written. You had two different slave. You had the international slave trade, and then you had the internal slave trade. I don't know exactly when this was written. This was number 5. He said 1921 to 1920 or 1950 or 1821 to 1851. He was senator. So if he wrote this in the 20s, that was right after they outlawed the importation of slaves from Africa, right? Because it was or importation of slaves into the United States because it was inhumane, and that's right around the time that the world got a conscience about international slave trade, but that's also right around the time that slavery in the United States ramped all the way up because and this is what's around that time is what classifies the American black slave different from anywhere else is because during this time we had also bought the Louisiana Purchase, a couple different years, but it's all the same. And then we had a new like there's a huge demand for slaves, but then there was no way to get slaves from Africa. So then the internal slave trade went bonkers, right? And this is when the separations of families was rampant and everything because the price of a slave the price of slaves skyrocketed and the demand skyrocketed as well. So separating families and then there's a lot. I don't want to go into the whole history around there, but what's just I'm already at 5 minutes. We'll read a little bit more, but this essay right here will go. This is going to be great. We'll move. I just read a little bit of the internal slave trade. Let's read a little bit here at the end of that one. Again, because we're moving so fast, I'll have to read this and then I'll summarize for you later on. Is this the land your fathers loved, the freedom which they toiled to win? Is this the earth whereon they moved? Are these the graves they slumber in? The fugitive law, or the fugitive slave law. But a still more inhumane, disgraceful, and scandalous state of things remains to be presented by an act of the American Congress not yet 2 years old. Slavery has been nationalized in its most horrific, horrible, and revolting form. By that act, Mason and Dixon's line has been obliterated. New York has become as Virginia, and the power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children of slaves remains no longer a mere state institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States. The power is so coextensive with the Star-Spangled Banner in American Christianity, where these go, may also the merciless slave hunter. Where these are, men is not scared, or not sacred. He is a bird for the sportsman's gun. But that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and person of every man, are put in peril. Your broad republican domain is hunting ground for men, not for thieves and robbers, enemies of society, merely but for men guilty of no crime. Your lawmakers have commanded all good citizens to engage in this hellish sport. Your presidency, your secretary of state, your lords, nobles, essentialistics, enforce as a duty you owe to your free and glorious country and to your God that you do this accursed thing. Not fewer than 40 Americans have, within the past 2 years, been hunted down and, without a moment's warning, hurried away in chains and consigned to slavery and excruciating torture. Some of these have had wives and children dependent on them for bread, but of this no account was made. The right of the hunter is his prey stands superior in the right of marriage and in all rights in this republic, the rights of God included. For black men, there are neither law, justice, humanity, nor religion. The fugitive slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge gets $10 for every victim he consigns to slavery and $5 when he fails to do so. The oath of any two villains is sufficient under this hell-black enactment to send the most pervious and exemplary black man into remorseless jaws of slavery. His own testimony is nothing. He can bring no witnesses for him. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side, and that side is the side of the oppressor. Let this be damning. Let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in this tyrant-killing, king-hating, people-loving, democratic Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their offices under an open and palpable bribe, and are bond in deciding in the case of man's liberty to hear only his accusers. Whoa. I don't know if you guys understood everything what he just said right there, but let's take a key point. Um, if the judges paid $10 to send you to slavery and $5 to set you free, what do you think he's gonna do? Just makes more sense. They're gonna send you back to slavery. So I'm gonna read more about that. I did not know that, nor a lot of this I did not know. Very interesting. I'm glad that I did find this because there is a lot of, of gold in this book. A lot of gold. Well, I hope you guys found that as interesting as I did.